Let's get into it. Sold Not For Sale podcast. Coach Colin here. We got Joe Rogan, who usually posts and ghosts and never reads anything about himself. For some reason, someone must have gave him this information. Maybe it just got to him somehow. But he's complaining about what Kamala Harris and her aides have said about him in a new book that just came out. So Rogan's actually setting the record straight in this clip. And then we're going to go through what was in this book and what they've said about Rogan, because they're going all over the place. They're blaming Elon Musk. They're blaming Dana White. They're blaming Rogan. They're saying that he was making them jump through hoops and all sorts of stuff. So let's hear Rogan set the record straight, and then we'll jump over to the rest. And I got another clip to play for you so you get more context. Let's go.
The best example of that. I mean, especially today. I guess it's probably a good time to talk about this. There was a thing that came out recently. There was a book. There was some book about the Kamala Harris campaign where they talked about her getting on this show. And they said a bunch of things that weren't true. They talked to supposedly talked to like 150 different people about her and, you know, what happened with her coming on the show. I don't know if it's 150. A lot of people. They didn't talk to us, and which is kind of crazy. And it was just like they didn't even ask. But they said things that just weren't true. One of the things they said that weren't true was that we lied about the day that Trump was coming on. No, we just didn't tell you that Trump was coming on. He was already booked a long time ago. This is how it worked. Trump was really easy to book, like super easy. We offered one day. He said yes. That was it. There was no, what are we going to talk about? How long is it going to be? Is it going to be edited? There was nothing. Yeah. What's the waiver? Here, give me that waiver. Sign it. It was so easy. So he was already booked. They never committed to doing the show. So all this talk, there was another thing they said that the reason why they did the Beyonce thing, the Beyonce event in Houston, was so that they could be in Texas to do my show. They never agreed to do the show. None of that's true. They never agreed. They also said that they sent someone down here to the studio to do a walkthrough of the set. That's not true. The Trump administration did. I mean, if they are trying to say that they, as in the entire federal government, well, I don't think the Trump, well, I guess the Secret Service is a part of the federal government. Maybe you can kind of get away with saying that because the Secret Service came down here for Trump and looked around that we sent someone down, but it was not. It was the Trump administration sent them down because they're the only ones that had a date to do the show. These people didn't have a date to do. They never agreed to do the show. This is really important. Even after Trump went on, they offered for me to come to D.C. and do a show with Kamala. But even then, it was the same deal. It was only like 45 minutes to an hour. And, you know, it was not on my set. And I said that, look, he did it here. We should probably do it here. Like, if it's possible to do it here. Obviously, when he did it, it had an enormous result. I'm willing to do the same thing for her. I wanted to release both of them on the same day. This was my goal. I was even trying to figure out if there was a way that I could do it. And I even offered to do it late that night. So the night that Trump came on, I'm like, what if we do her, like when she's done in Texas, if she came here? But no one ever committed to doing it. This is like really important because they keep pretending that I lied or I did this or I did that. They never committed to doing it. Well, we went through, I've got a whole, we have all the receipts, by the way.
Of course.
I have a whole list of conversations that took place. They never said she was going to do it. So this whole idea that we f***ed her over and then we f***ed her over for Trump, incorrect. Just not true.
And, she, you know.
But I think it's someone trying to cover their ass for the fact that she never did it. And if she did do it, it might have had a positive effect.
Yeah.
If her and I had a good time and we got along great and she won over, you know, the air quote young male vote, things could have been different. Who knows? So this guy's probably trying to cover his.
That's what I'm thinking too, is because the reaction to her not coming was like pretty big.
But they didn't commit to doing it. This is the thing. While this guy's saying like that we were difficult to deal with, not true. We were super easy. We made it real clear. But also, it's got to be the actual real show. It shouldn't be some fake version of it where I'm sitting in a conference room. Also, they wanted a stenographer in the room. They wanted staff in the room. Trump was just in here by himself.
Yeah.
Just me, him, and Jamie. That's it. For 3 hours. Like, they wanted to do everything. They wanted it very controlled, and they were really concerned that it wasn't going to be edited. So I don't think they ever really were sure they wanted to do it.
Yeah.
Then once Trump did it, and it had this huge response, I think then it was like, what the f***? What are we doing? He just did it. It's got 50 million views. This is so stupid. Why didn't we do it? And so then there was, even then, when they offered to do it in D.C., my manager asked, is she committed to doing this? If I bring this to Joe? No. She hasn't committed to doing this. Have you brought this to her? Like, they wouldn't even say whether or not she had expressed willingness to do it or whether they were trying to convince her to do it. We know for sure there were some people that were supposedly on her staff that were against her doing it. They thought it was because it's a bunch of wokesters. They're basically in a cult. You have a like, if you're willing to go on Fox News, you talk to what's that guy's name, Brett Breyer?
Yeah.
Where they cut that off after 20 minutes. When they did that, that's when I was like, look, it's got to be in the studio. It's got to be in the studio, and it's got to be real. It's got to be a real conversation. I had entertained a couple of times going to, but I was like, 45 minutes is just not enough. You and I have been talking an hour and a half already.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just it's not enough time. You need more time. You need more time to find out what makes someone tick.
And that's probably what she was afraid of.
Probably what they were afraid of. Maybe not her. I don't think they should have been.
No.
I think we would have had a good old time.
No, you're a good guy.
I think we would have had fun.
I think it was a huge mistake on her part. And let's be honest, like, it's the kind of thing that it's reminiscent of forget the congressman that asked Mark Zuckerberg how Facebook makes money. It's just like you're so detached from the modern world. It's like you could spend millions of dollars on all your ad campaign all across YouTube, or you could just go sit in the room with Joe for 3 hours, and I'll tell you which one's going to do better for you, lady. But she picked the ad campaigns on YouTube.
The problem is that I think the people that saw it as they thought they were going to win anyway, apparently. Mm-hmm. And the people that saw it as a negative thought, like, there's been a few blunders where things didn't go well. But I think a lot of those blunders are, I was listening to this woman on the Tucker Carlson show, and she was talking about what Biden was like during the presidency. And one of the things that she said I thought that was very interesting was that there's many people that worked with Biden that said there were moments in his first couple of years where he was very lucid, and that he would be actually running the meetings, and he had talking points that were written down, but he was having these lucid conversations, and then he would do these public things and he would have blunders. I think a lot of it is just the pressure of performing publicly under intense scrutiny. Like, if you have to do a live set, like, say if you have to do Saturday Night Live or something like that, and you're going to do a monologue, the pressure of doing that monologue is so much different than the pressure of just going up at a local comedy club.
Oh, sure.
It's insane. And I think that pressure, Joe Biden, as much as, I'm sure he has a high self-opinion, clearly, when he is confronted by the reality that half the country hates him and thinks he's doing a terrible job, and then he has to talk publicly live, then I think those cognitive problems were sort of elevated.
That makes sense.
I think that's the same with her. So I think that's the same with her when she's on Fox with Brett Breyer. I think it's hostile environments. I think it's large crowds. I think it's a lot of things where you don't get to see the real person. So that was my goal. My goal was to try to meet the real person. Just like I did with Trump, just try to meet and talk with the real person. And my goal was, what I really wanted to do, we talked about this quite a bit, me and my manager, of doing it on the same day. And my manager, she agreed. She's like, this would be the perfect way to set it up. Like, we both agree, put them both out at the same time, go watch them all, see what you think. That would be the ultimate way to do it. But they never agreed to do it. So all this that's in that book that they never talked to us, just not true. Maybe it's someone's trying to preserve their job. Maybe someone's trying to say, hey, it wasn't my fault. They became difficult. No, we didn't become difficult. And the other thing was, like, they wanted to do it that Saturday, the day after Trump. And I said, I'll do it, but it has to be at 8:30 a.m. The reason why was I had a podcast already scheduled that was a live UFC podcast. So we do this thing called Fight Companion. So there was this title fight that was happening in, I think, was it Saudi Arabia? Or was it Dubai or Abu Dhabi? It was somewhere in the Middle East, I believe, if I remember correctly. See if you can find out what that was, just so we're clear. I have friends. I flew in 3 of my buddies from California, and we were all going to do this podcast together. Like, we had committed to doing this. Like, they were already in town. Like, I can't just say, no, guys, I can't do this awesome thing because I have to interview Kamala Harris.
No, I understand.
Seems like I should to some people, but that's because you're in the politics business. I'm an MMA commentator. This is part of my job. And I said I would do it. I said, I'll do it, but it has to be like 8:30 in the morning because I have to be done by the time the fights start. That's reasonable. Yeah. They didn't do that either. So this idea that I sabotaged her, there's a bunch of people that say I f***ed her over or whatever. Like, that's not true. So you can think whatever you want, but it was Abu Dhabi. So that was Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. So for UFC fans, just so you know, for people listening that aren't UFC fans, that was a huge fight. That was a gigantic fight. Max Holloway just beat Justin Gaethje in, like, literally the knockout of all time. And Ilia Topuria is one of the absolute best fighters on planet Earth, if not number 1 pound for pound, certainly number 2, or number 3. So he's in the top 5 of the absolute best athletes in any weight class. So this was a clash of the titans, the greatest featherweight champion of all time versus the current featherweight champion. Damn. So I'm not going to miss that.
Yeah.
I understand. I work around you. I said I would do it at night. I'll come back. I'll do it at midnight. I don't give a I'll do it. So it wasn't me f***ing someone over. And so just whoever's in charge of spreading that narrative, that's deceptive.
Yeah. And she missed out, man. She could have sat in the same chair that Shane Gillis sat in, right?
Yes.
What a great thing to say after all that. Could have sat in the same chair as Shane Gillis, which would be an honor for many people. I think, Joe's right. There's sometimes I'm nervous and I suddenly get dementia. It's been known to happen. I get a little bit of Alzheimer's. I get dementia. I just start falling all over the place. I start seeing things that aren't there and I start walking towards them. It's happens to the best of us. I'm sure you've had that happen from time to time. You get a little nervous because you got to go and talk to the boss or a manager or something. Then all of a sudden you get dementia. You got to sit down for a few. Yeah, no, I don't think so. But let's get into what he was talking about. You know what? One thing that he said, is Joe going to release the receipts? Because he's like, I got text messages. Are you going to release those? Because that would be crazy. Also, Kamala Harris, this is how out of touch. And you could see it throughout the whole campaign. I was covering, if you're a watcher of this channel, I was covering Kamala Harris and all the blunders and all the nonsense and all the gaslighting that was going on by the cultural phenomenon that so many people were calling her. And the fact that she is sitting there and her people, and they're like, can we have a stenographer in the podcast? And my aides and people all around just shows just so out of touch. So out of touch. And when you hear what these people are saying, very out of touch. It just, the whole thing is nonsense. The fact that she thought this was a bad idea says so much. Just the fact that her people were telling her, new book, she claims Dana White and Elon Musk pulled the strings to sabotage Kamala Harris. Joe Rogan interview, leaked emails show ex-VP's team upset. Now, I don't really think that this is factual. I don't think that Dana White is going to do something like this. That's just me, and I don't know the man. But I feel like he's not going to do something like this. Is he going to say, hey, you got to have Trump on? I 100% think so, because they're really good friends. But is he going to say, don't interview Kamala? I don't know. A new book has a major claims about Joe Rogan and Kamala Harris' failed podcast appearance negotiations. It suggests UFC CEO Dana White and billionaire Elon Musk, both acquaintances, oh, so funny, of Rogan, allegedly convinced him not to host Harris. The Democrat Party's presidential hopeful in November 2024 was then Kamala Harris. Wow, they're really giving us some backstory on Kamala Harris. Yes, we know who Kamala Harris is. Meanwhile, Trump, who'd served, okay, good journalism, giving us a full breakdown of who Trump is and who Kamala is. Shout out to them. Good for them. Speculation abounded that Kamala Harris and Trump could potentially appear separately on the world-renowned podcast Joe Rogan, connect to a broader audience, especially the white young male demographic. For some reason, they're just, white people get left out in the cold quite a bit. That's the people that they were trying to reach. They want to reach those people. They're not even willing to say it. That's really funny. Another aide said that Kamala Harris was traumatized by Joe Rogan interviewing Donald Trump. Joe Rogan with the thumbs up, as you do after you're finished talking with Trump, of course. Newly released book detailing the 2024 presidential election has revealed the behind-the-scenes breakdown of negotiations between former vice president and the podcast host, failed discussions which took place while then candidate Donald Trump successfully secured an interview with Joe Rogan, proved to be a major setback for the Kamala Harris campaign. The book, if you guys want to read it, and if any of you go out and read this book, shout out to you. You got, I watch Joy read, I watch Rachel Maddow because I have to, but if you sit down and read this book, you are an all-star. The book is called Fight. Straight up just stealing that from Trump. You know Fight's Trump's thing. Come on. Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House, authored by John Allen and Amy Parnes, provides a detailed account of the negotiations behind. Imagine making a book just about the negotiate. That's how big Joe Rogan's gotten. That someone made a book off of his negotiations. I mean, this show as well. Let's jump here. This is a quote from one of the aides. After 2 Zoom sessions, Rogan's intermediaries had an offer. They gave him an offer. Could Rogan join Harris in Michigan? They wanted Rogan to go to Michigan. He asked, proposing a date later in the week. No go, Rogan's team said after reaching the host on a week-long hunting trip. Austin or nothing. That's going to be tough, they said. I don't know how to say that name. Flottery. I'm the butcher of names. We're only a few weeks away from the election. Harris had less than 0 reason to be in Texas. It was not a swing state. Her campaign was flush with cash. It made no sense to take her off the campaign trail to raise money. She was in battleground or bust mode. Oh yeah, I'm sure she was. Plus a detour to Texas might smell like desperation. These people are so out of touch. The reason to be in Texas is obviously because of Joe Rogan. That's a good enough reason. They didn't even realize that that's a good enough reason to be in Texas. It's that you get to be on Joe Rogan's show and you get to show yourself as a human being instead of the drunk robot that we all thought you were. It would have been good enough. And then on top of that, some of them were actually mad. Let's play this. They get into a little bit more of what was going on throughout this whole thing. This negotiation went bad because of Joe Rogan.
President Donald Trump appeared on various alternative platforms to help spread his message and rake in younger voters.
Trump talked to the likes of comedians Theo Vaughn and Andrew Schultz and a young streamer named Adine Ross. Then Vice President Kamala Harris also visited unorthodox shows of her own, like Alex Cooper's Call Her Daddy podcast and NFL commentator Shannon Sharp's Club Shay Shay.
There was a crucial appearance that Harris failed to land, however, and that was on the Joe Rogan Experience. The Hill recently published an excerpt from a new book titled Fight, Inside the Battle for the White House by Jonathan Allen and Amy Parnes.
The book details how the would-be Harris and Rogan podcast episode ultimately fell apart.
In a nutshell, there was a back and forth between Harris's campaign and Rogan's, according to the book, and Rogan's conditions were clear. Kamala had to come to Austin, Texas, and no topics could be off limits.
The book says that Harris's team struggled to find a reason to get her to Texas, since it was obvious to everyone that she would lose that state.
After deciding to throw a rally in Houston, presumably to get her closer to Rogan, Harris's deputy campaign manager Rob Flaherty decided to propose a date. Friday, October 25th, he suggested. Rogan responded by saying that he had a personal day scheduled. What about Saturday morning, Flaherty asked. Only if it's before 8:30, Rogan's people responded.
Then came the shock. The tone is different, Flaherty thought. The Vice President of the United States is offering to come to your effing show, and you keep putting up more hoops. Harris's team still wanted to make it work, but a new wariness set in.
The worst vice president, most unlikable, most leftist, wants to come on your show for her own benefit, and you're making us jump through hoops? Bow down. Why won't he just bow down? Who is this Rogan person? Oh man, their campaign. Straight up shambles. Just $1 billion of shambles.
On October 22nd, the book continues, the same day the Harris camp announced the rally, the Associated Press reported that Trump would be Rogan's guest on the Friday, the personal day Rogan had originally reserved. Democratic strategist and former Obama alum John Cooper wrote on Blue Sky, "Wow, there's no way of knowing the extent to which this could have changed the election outcome, but Joe Rogan lied through his effing teeth and intentionally screwed over the Harris campaign."
You know, it's really funny that the personal day, this is why they think he lied, because he said he had a personal day. That personal day was interviewing Donald Trump. But hey, if you get to sit down with Donald Trump, That's a personal day. What are we talking about here? This guy, Joe Rogan, is not the one running for president. He doesn't have to do back-to-back gigantic podcasts if he doesn't want to. Having Donald Trump is enough. That's enough. Do you know how nervous you would get? It would be enough to give Joe Rogan Alzheimer's. He would have straight up dementia. He'd get so nervous. You kidding me? Be falling upstairs and whatnot. So that's why they figured that he lied. And then this guy saying that Joe lied through his teeth and he screwed over the campaign intentionally. You know something? I'm trying to bring you guys all the information, but you guys know my bias already. I hope he did do it on purpose. Yeah, I do. I hope he did it on purpose. And if he did, good job. Good job, buddy. Good one. Perfect. Good. I hope he did.
CEO and co-founder of the Federalist, Sean Davis, wrote on X, if Harris had gone on Rogan, Trump would have won Virginia, Minnesota, and New Mexico.
Editor and CEO of ZTO, Mehdi Hassan, wrote, why didn't Kamala go on Rogan? They all screeched in op-eds and tweets for months on end. Maybe, just maybe, because Rogan, in the tank for the GOP, made it near impossible for her to come on.
Journalist Matt Taibbi wrote, anyone who thinks Rogan didn't want to interview Harris doesn't understand the business. Of course he wanted to book her, but asking for conditions shows a total misunderstanding of that audience. She should have just dropped by and eaten a pile of shrooms with him.
That would have been something worth watching if that had happened.
I would have watched all 3 hours of that, Niall, but okay.
Can you imagine Kamala Harris on a bag of shrooms? Jeez. Wow. Just so much realization. She would just be like silent. She'd be like, do you know how much I drink, Joe? Joe would be like, tell me. I drink so much. Just so much. And I have seen such evil things. Do you know Willie Brown? Do you know what I've done in my time? Oh, it'd be so bad. Because sometimes when you're clear, you have a great time on those things, But if you're not, so many things come to the surface. It's crazy. She would be like, my dad wasn't a Marxist. He was a full-blown communist. He was so communist. He's been secretly running this campaign. This is a plot to get communism into the White House. Oh, God. Biden's been dead for weeks. Biden's been dead for 7 months. I don't even know who that guy is that they have walking around. He's so tall. I don't know. It would be a bad look, but it would be fun to watch. Definitely fun to watch. Interesting that they're taking this position. They're blaming every single, I think what Joe said was right. It's somebody trying to cover themselves. Definitely. They just don't want to seem like the person that messed this up because this was the deciding factor. Again, Joe Rogan doesn't choose presidents. What he does is he humanizes people and he puts them on a platform so massive that people get to really, and talks to them for so long that people get a real understanding of who a person is. And he did that with Trump. And a lot of people came away from that interview being like, oh, this guy really knows how to talk. Knows what he's talking about, seems funny at times, fully engaged with Rogan, and he was able to hold his own. It's not like he got trampled in the interview, and in fact, a lot of the times he was leading the whole thing. If they had saw that same thing with her, which they wouldn't have, my opinion, maybe the election could have been swayed, but that's not Rogan's doing. That's them. Kamala Harris could have and should have just said, tell us whatever date you want, and I will be there. If she had done that, I don't know what would be happening right now. I guess Elon Musk wouldn't be in Doge. Doge wouldn't be trying to do a probe into USAID, which is wild when you see what's happening with that. I did an episode on my other channel. Crazy what they've discovered. Things would be a lot different. So, kudos to that aide member of Kamala Harris's who screwed up so badly. Good work. You saved America unintentionally. Anyways, guys, like, subscribe, turn on the notifications. It helps us tremendously. And other than that, I'm out.